You know, we live in a world where religious lines are drawn pretty thickly. We have these boxes: Christians over here, Muslims over there, and never the twain shall meet. But what if I told you that one of the most revered figures in Islam, a man mentioned more times in the Quran by name than the Prophet Muhammad himself, is Jesus?
It sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? If you just look at the headlines, you'd think these two faiths are polar opposites. But when you actually open the text, when you look at the theology, you realize that Jesus, or Issa, as he's known in Arabic, isn't just a footnote in Islam. He's a central pillar. In fact, here's a statement that usually stops people in their tracks. You literally cannot be a Muslim if you do not believe in Jesus.
That is a heavy statement. I think a lot of people assume that because Muslims don't view him as the Son of God, they must reject him entirely. But you're saying it's the opposite? That belief in him is a requirement?
Absolutely. It's a prerequisite of faith. If a Muslim rejects Jesus, they are rejecting Islam. But, and this is the massive but, the lens through which they see him is different. It's like looking at the same mountain from two different sides of the valley. The shape looks different, the lighting is different, but it's the same mountain.
So let's climb that mountain. If he isn't the Son of God in the Islamic view, who is he? Just a wise teacher? A philosopher?
Much more than that. In Islam, he is Al-Masi, the Messiah. He is a prophet and a messenger of God. He is described as a word from God and a spirit from him. Those are incredibly high titles. But the crucial distinction, the line in the sand, is his divinity. Islam is fiercely monotheistic. The concept of Tawhid, or the oneness of God, is absolute. So for a Muslim, Jesus is a man, a miraculous man, a man born of a virgin, a man who performed miracles, but a man who ate food, walked the earth, and worshipped God rather than being God himself.
You mentioned the virgin birth. That's usually the part where people think the divergence happens. I've heard people say Muslims don't believe in the Christmas story.
Actually, the Quran confirms the virgin birth explicitly. There's an entire chapter, chapter 19, named Surah Maryam, chapter Mary. She is the only woman mentioned by name in the entire Quran, and she is held in higher esteem than perhaps any other woman in history. The narrative is beautiful. It describes her withdrawing from her family, the appearance of the angel Gabriel, and the miraculous conception.
Wait, so the angel Gabriel is there too?
Yes, Jibril. He appears to announce the gift of a pure boy. And Mary's reaction is very human. She's terrified, she's confused. She asks, "How can I have a boy when no man has touched me?" And the answer she gets is the core of Islamic theology regarding miracles. It is easy for God. When God decrees a matter, he simply says, "Be," and it is.
Be, and it is. That's powerful. It removes the biological necessity and puts it purely in the realm of divine will. But here's where I get curious. If they believe in the virgin birth, and they believe he's the Messiah, what exactly did he do? In the Bible, the miracles are a huge part of proving who he is. Does the Islamic tradition keep those?
It keeps them and actually adds to them. You have the classics: healing the blind, curing the leper, raising the dead. But the Quran emphasizes something very specific every time these miracles are mentioned. It says he did these things by God's permission. It's a safeguard. It's ensuring that the observer understands that Jesus is the vessel, not the source. The power flows through him, not from him.
That's a nuanced distinction. It's like the difference between the light bulb and the electricity.
Exactly. And there's a miracle in the Quran that isn't in the standard Gospels, though it appears in some apocryphal texts. It's the story of the clay bird.
The clay bird? I don't think I know this one.
It's fascinating. As a child, Jesus fashions the shape of a bird out of clay. He breathes into it, and by God's permission, it becomes a real, living bird and flies away.
Wow. That's incredibly poetic. It's almost like a mini creation story. echoing how God created Adam from clay.
Precisely, and that parallel is drawn explicitly. The Quran says the likeness of Jesus before God is the likeness of Adam. God created Adam from dust, then said, "Be," and he was. So if Adam had no father and no mother, and he is just a human, why is it so hard to accept Jesus having a mother but no father, while still being just a human? It's using logic to deconstruct the claim of divinity.
That's a really strong logical argument. It frames the Son of God title as a misunderstanding of a miracle, rather than a lie. But we have to talk about the elephant in the room, the cross. The crucifixion is the absolute bedrock of Christianity. Without the death and resurrection, there is no Christianity. What does Islam say happened on Good Friday?
This is the sharpest divergence point. This is where the two narratives snap apart. The standard Islamic view, based on a specific verse in the Quran, is that Jesus was not crucified, nor was he killed. The verse says, "But it appeared so to them."
It appeared so to them. That sounds like a mystery novel. So, an illusion? A body double?
There are various interpretations among scholars. Some say it was a case of mistaken identity, that someone else, perhaps Judas or a volunteer, was made to look like Jesus and took his place. Others interpret it more metaphysically. But the core theological point isn't about the how, it's about the why. In the Islamic worldview, God protects his prophets from ultimate humiliation. The idea of God's beloved messenger being tortured and killed by his enemies doesn't fit the narrative of divine protection in this specific context. So God raised Jesus up to himself, alive.
Alive? So he didn't die at all?
Correct. He ascended physically into the heavens. He is considered to be alive right now, in a different state of existence, waiting.
Waiting for what?
For the second coming.
Hold on. Muslims believe in the second coming of Jesus?
They do. And it's not a minor belief. It's a major sign of the end times, the Akhirah. The Islamic eschatology paints a very dramatic picture. The world will be in chaos, overrun by the Dajjal, the Antichrist. The Dajjal will be deceiving the world, performing false miracles, claiming to be divine. And who comes down to stop him? Not Muhammad, Jesus.
That is, honestly, that's a plot twist I didn't expect. I assumed if anyone was coming back to save the day in Islam, it would be Muhammad.
It's a common assumption. But Muhammad is the seal of the prophets. His job was to deliver the final revelation, the Quran, and his earthly mission is complete. Jesus, however, has unfinished business. Since he didn't die, he has to return to complete his life. But here's the critical part. When he returns, he doesn't return as the founder of Christianity. He returns as a Muslim prophet to restore justice and correct the misconceptions about himself.
So he comes back to say, "You guys got it wrong?"
Essentially, the prophecies say he will break the cross, which is a metaphorical or perhaps literal way of saying he will abolish the symbol that represented the idea of his death and divinity. He will unite the believers. It's a moment of vindication for the Islamic narrative. He defeats the Antichrist, ushers in an era of peace and wealth where money will flow like water and no one will accept charity. And then, eventually, he will die a natural death and be buried.
It's fascinating how these narratives weave together. It's the same characters, the same setting, but the script has been rewritten in the third act. It makes me wonder about the psychological impact of this. If you are a Muslim, you have this deep love for Jesus, but it's a protective love. You feel like you're defending his reputation against what you see as an exaggeration.
That's a beautiful way to put it, a protective love. I've heard Muslim scholars say that they love Jesus so much, they refuse to associate him with what they consider the insult of needing to eat, sleep, or suffer if he were truly God. To them, elevating a human to godhood isn't honoring him. It's burdening him with attributes he never claimed.
It really recontextualizes the interfaith dialogue, doesn't it? It's not about, we have Jesus and you don't. It's, we both have him but we remember him differently.
Exactly. And think about the cultural implications. When a Muslim mentions Jesus, they say Isa alayhi as-salam. Jesus, peace be upon him. The same honorific used for all prophets. There is a tenderness there. In Sufi traditions, the mystical side of Islam, Jesus is often the patron saint of asceticism, of charity, of pure spirituality. He is the Spirit of God, Ruhullah. He represents the renunciation of the material world.
That sounds very close to the Franciscan view in Christianity, actually. The poverty, the purity.
There is so much overlap. The ethical teachings, mercy, compassion, taking care of the poor, are virtually identical. The friction is almost entirely theological, centered on the nature of God, not the nature of goodness.
I want to circle back to something you said earlier about the bridge. We live in a time of immense polarization. How does knowing this, knowing that Muslims revere Jesus, change the conversation?
Well, it disarms the hostility. If you are a Christian and you realize that the person across from you also loves Mary, also believes in the virgin birth, and is waiting for Jesus to return to defeat evil, suddenly the other isn't so other anymore. You have a shared language. You might disagree on the divinity definitions, but you agree on the sanctity of the figure.
It's like finding out you and a stranger are actually distant cousins. You might argue about the family history, but you're part of the same tree.
And that tree is the Abrahamic faith. We often forget that Abrahamic isn't just a label, it's a lineage. Islam sees itself not as a new religion that started in the 7th century, but as a restoration of the original faith of Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. So regarding Jesus, the Muslim stance is, we are bringing the original picture back into focus.
It's challenging, though, because for a Christian, the divinity of Christ is non-negotiable. And for a Muslim, the non-divinity is non-negotiable. It seems like an impasse.
Theologically, yes, it is an impasse. There is no middle ground between he is God and he is not God. But socially, culturally, humanly, that's where the bridge holds. You can respect the devotion of the other without accepting their dogma. When a Muslim hears a Christian singing a hymn about the love of Jesus, the Muslim can resonate with that love, even if they interpret the object of that love differently.
That's a profound thought. Shared emotion, divergent theology.
And let's not forget the future aspect. Both faiths are forward-looking. Both are waiting for a resolution to history. Both believe that Jesus is the key to that resolution. There is a shared hope there. In a world that feels like it's spiraling into chaos, both Christians and Muslims are looking at the sky, effectively waiting for the same face to appear.
That is a striking image. 2 billion Christians and nearly 2 billion Muslims, all waiting for the same man. It makes the current conflict seem smaller somehow.
It does. It puts our political squabbles into perspective. If you believe that the ultimate judge is coming back to set the scales right, it might make you more careful about how you treat your neighbor today.
So, to wrap this up, if you had to summarize the Muslim Jesus in 3 words, what would they be?
I would say miracle, messenger, Messiah.
Miracle, messenger, Messiah, and yet human.
Unapologetically human. And in that humanity, Islam finds his true greatness. By being a man who submitted his will entirely to God, he became the perfect example for other men. If he were God, we couldn't emulate him. But because he is a man, his patience, his worship, and his sacrifice are things we can actually strive for.
That leaves us with a lot to chew on. It turns out that the gap between the mosque and the church might be filled with more common ground than we thought, even if that ground is shaped a little differently on either side.
The ground is ancient, and the footprints on it belong to the same traveler. It's just a matter of where we think he was going.
Well, I think I'm going to be thinking about the clay bird metaphor for the rest of the week. It's a beautiful reminder that understanding doesn't require agreement, it just requires curiosity.
and a willingness to listen to the story the other person is actually telling, rather than the one you think they're telling.
Perfectly said. We'll leave it there. Thanks for helping us cross that bridge today.
My pleasure.
And to everyone listening, keep asking questions. You never know what connections you might find in the answers. Until next time.